the same 3. So since 5th period we're doing the same things, always look at the class recording because we might do different ones, but today they chose the same ones. So, okay, for number 2, we are simplifying using our order of operations. So PEMDAS, GEMDAS, GEMS, PEM, whatever acronym you use that. So first, parentheses or grouping, whatever's inside grouping or parentheses. So here we would add those 2 together. So add that to get 8. And then any exponents or radicals, square roots, cube roots, raised to some power. So we have 2 of those on your calculator. You can do this in one of 2 ways. Either use the square button for anything that's square, so 8 squared. You just press it, it'll go up there automatically. And then for the other one, to the third, you can do the same thing. It's 2. So I can do 2 squared, but then go to the left and change it to 3. Or you can do 2 and use this little arrow up, and it'll put it up there. So either or. So we have 24 minus 64 plus 4 times 8. It's 2 to the third. 2 times 2 times 2. Oh. Times 2 times 2. Okay. Not 2 times 3. And then we would multiply. And then you could put this whole thing, the rest of this, into your calculator to figure that out, or you can do it step by step. I'll go step by step. So 24 minus 64 is negative 40. And if I add 32, we get negative 8. Any questions on that one? Make sure your work and your answer gets put on the answer sheet. If the box is too small, get extra paper, staple it to it. All right. In number 4, this is going back to what we were just doing, solving. So we are going to distribute the negative 7. Be careful with your negatives. Be careful with your negatives. And then combine like terms. Do exactly what it says. Don't do the opposite thing. So negative 4 plus 21. Then solve this like a regular problem. Get rid of 14 by subtracting. And divide both sides by 17. You should have gotten 4. You did get 4. Okay. If you didn't, go back and fix it. Do you have any questions about that one? In number 5, we have to get x by itself. What would be a good first step? So we could do that. So there's actually two different ways to do this. So let's say we multiply everything. We have to multiply everything by -1. Now, you may have subtracted the 8 first, which is fine. We will get the same answer either way. I will show both ways. So if I multiply, I have to do it to everything. I can't just do it to this part. So that these -4's cancel. This becomes -32. And this becomes -20. By multiplying to everything, I've gotten rid of the fraction. I don't have to deal with it anymore. And now I can activate the on both sides. Your answer should have been 12. I'm going to also do this as if, let's say you got rid of the 8 first. You don't have to write this next part, but you can if you want. So if you got rid of the 8 first, you would be subtracting. And then you would multiply the -4 on both sides. You would get the same answer either way. It does not matter. Questions on that? Alright. So make sure you hold onto that sheet, the answer sheet. You don't really need the small little papers unless you want them. Look at your course calendar, the gold sheet. So make sure that you are aware of upcoming dates for Delta Math, for quiz, for test. That's later in September, beginning of October, the quiz and test. But we do have Delta Math due on Friday. We're going to talk about that. What we talk about today will be part of that. And then continuing on Friday, that will also be due on Friday. And so on and so forth. So a lot of the stuff we do in this unit should be familiar to you. But we're still going to go through it. Slope and writing equations and graphing and intercepts. Okay. Take note as to which delta maths are formative, which ones are informative. Still do them all because they're all great practice. Okay. Questions about that? I have these. Okay. So everyone should have notes that talk about rate of change and slope. Make sure that is up. And I want you to go ahead and write this. Okay. So when we're talking about a rate of change, this is a ratio that shows how one variable changes with respect to another. So all of the computers and iPads can get put away, closed. We don't need that right now. Thank you. And then on a linear graph, this is called the slope of the line. So we might interchange those words. Rate of change and slope. Slope is written as a ratio, so some fraction, of the vertical change or the rise to the horizontal change or the run between any 2 points on a line. This remains constant for any 2 points on the same line. So that means from point A to point B, B to C, C to D, and so on and so forth, it's always going to be the same. Slope is written as a fraction, so that's that ratio. In simplest form, we're always going to make it in simplest form. And slope is known as the variable m. Once you have these, I want you to draw these 4 graphs and write these 4 words. Positive, negative, 0, undefined. So just draw this to the best of your ability in each of these boxes and then write those 4 words. We're going to describe them here in a second. You're just drawing the x and y axis. We're actually going to draw it here in a second. Does anyone still need this part up here? Adrian, you did.
I don't know.
So we're going to talk about what this looks like and how we could determine. So draw a line that looks like this. It doesn't have to be perfect. And when we talk about positive slopes, if we're looking at it left to right, we're looking at the rise, how far it goes up or down first. So this is going up and then to the right. So that would be some positive direction over some positive direction. Up and right are usually positive directions. But I could also look at it the opposite way. I could look at it right to left, and this would be going down and to the left. Down and left are usually negative directions. And if I have a negative over a negative, it's still going to give you a positive. So you can go either way. Then draw in the negative. It's going to be going in the opposite direction. It doesn't have to be perfect. You just need a line. And those directions, if I'm looking at my rise over my run, I'm going down and to the right. Or if I'm looking at it right to left, I'm going up and to the left. So when you're looking at directions, one of them needs to be negative, not both, because that would make it a positive. 0 is a line that looks like this. And if I'm thinking about rise over run, so rise is usually up and down. Am I moving up and down on this line? Pretend it was actually straight and not my crooked line, but am I moving up and down? No. So I'm not moving up and down at all, but I am moving left and right. So I have some 0 dividing some number, but 0 divided by anything is what? 0. So the slope here is always going to be 0. Undefined is going to be a straight up and down vertical line. And this one's different because I am moving up and down. My rise is moving, but is my run moving? Am I moving left and right? No. Pick a number, whatever number you want, your favorite number, put it in the calculator, divide 0. Pick a number, divide by 0. What happens? 2. You should get something like this, an error. You can't divide by 0. So 0 divided by a number is fine, but we can't put 0 in the denominator. That's why we get an undefined slope. Yes. You run the error. Yes. So anytime you get an error, that's an undefined slope. Okay? Now we're going to actually calculate slope based on a graph. Does anyone still need this? So I write rise over run over here. The main thing to remember when we're doing slope is we always do rise first. Think of when you get out of bed, you usually sit up, you rise before you get out of bed. Unless you roll out of bed, then that's another story. If your graph has points, use those points. But if it doesn't, you're going to be looking at where the grid lines cross exactly. But this one has visible points, so we're going to start there. And here we're just going to count our rise and then count our run. So first, what type of slope is this? Positive, negative, 0, undefined. Positive, yes. We're going, if I'm looking left to right, up and then right. So I'm going to count how far we're going up. I'm going to visibly show that I'm counting. You don't have to do this part. So I'm going to count up 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. I went up 7. Whoa. My hand was turned. Okay. And then from that point, I'm going to go straight over. And I count it over to the right 4. So that fraction, that slope would be 7 over 4. And if I could simplify, I would do that. But can I simplify 7 over 4? No. So that is just our answer. Questions about that? Sarah, make sure you have this written down. Okay. I'm going to show you why the other way also works. So let's say instead of starting left to right, I went right to left, and I'm going to start at the top. So now instead of going up, I'm going to go down. It's still part of your rising because it's still vertical. And then I would go down 7. And to the left 4. Which would give me a negative 7 over a negative 4. And those negatives are negatives. So it doesn't matter which way you look at it as long as you're doing rise before run. Any questions there? We're going to do the next one. Kenny, did you have a question?
Like for a second, I blinked out. Was that the negative? You got taken by negative?
Because it went down.
But when did you fix the other way?
So, not a negative slope, but this is a negative direction. And this is a negative direction. And that's what we got, the negatives, but they cancel. And it's still positive. Okay. Now on 2, what type of slope is that? Good. So, because it's going down into the right. So, I see visible points. We're going to count what that is. How far would I go down? 3. Good. And then how far would I go over to the right? Positive 9. Good. So that would mean my slope is a negative. That was negative 3 over 9. Can that be simplified? Yes. To what? So you can either do it in your head or go into your calculator there, and hit alpha y equals hit enter, and put that in. So either or, right? You can do it in your head, or you can do it using that. What would that simplify to be? Sorry, yes, negative 1 over 3. Because I could simplify it, that means every time I go down 1 and to the right 3, I should end up at another point on this line. I'm going to test that. So if I start at this point and I go down 1 and to the right 3, I should end up at another point. And if I do it again, down 1 to the right 3, I should end up at another point. And I should be able to do that all the way on this line. If I went the other direction, let's say I started here, and I went up 1 and to the left 3, or up 3 and to the left 9, you would want to say, okay, the 1 is positive and the 3 is negative, but at the end, you would still write it with either the negative up top or out front, because you won't see it in the denominator. So it would be the same thing either way. Right? For number 3, before we talk about that, I want you to write these letters. Hoybux. This is going to be a mnemonic for you to help you remember to keep these straight. This is for horizontal lines. Have 0 slope and are y equals. And the other one is the opposite. Vertical lines have undefined slope and are x equals. So anytime we see horizontal and vertical lines, we should be thinking Hoybux to kind of help us remember this. So if I have a horizontal line, the slope is always going to be 0, no matter what. But if I wanted to count it, I could still do that. Because I know I won't have a rise, but I do have a run. I could count my run to be 4. But I know 0 over anything is still going to be 0. So I don't need to count it. I should know the slope is going to be 0. So then the next one should be undefined. You put UND for short. UND for short. And again, if you know that, great. If you want to count it, you could also do that. I have a rise. Let's say it's down 5, so -5. But I don't have a run. And if I were to put that in the calculator, I would get an error, and that would tell me it's undefined. Do you have any questions so far on how to find slope from a graph? I want you to look at the very back. There are a bunch of graphs where we're finding slope from a graph. Are there any you want to see go over together? Which one? I thought I heard a number, that's why I asked that. Okay. If not, we're going to move on. So go to the slope formula and write this. using this a lot, but before we start to use it, I'm just going to talk through it just in case we forget parts of it. So these come from our order pairs. We'll talk about that in a second. Our y's always go in the numerator. It's always y over x. That part we cannot switch, but let's say we forget this order. Let's say I mix up my y2 and my y1. That's fine, as long as you also switch the denominator. So you have to switch them together, otherwise you're going to get a positive when it should have been negative, or vice versa. As long as you switch both of them like this, not like this. Switch them horizontally, not vertically. Okay. So I'm going to label these. The first one as x1, y1. The second one as x2, y2. And then we're going to put each number into the formula. So our y2, and this one is 3, minus our y1, and this one is 1, over our x2 is 4, minus our x1 is 1. So it'll always be set up very similarly to this, and then we just subtract. 3 minus 1 is 2, and 4 minus 1 is 3, so that is our simple, because this one cannot be simplified. Any questions on that? We're going to do a few more. Try number 2. I'm going to label them again. If the labeling helps you figure out which one is which, do that. If it doesn't help you, don't do that. We have m equals our y2, negative 2, minus our y1, 4, over x2, which is 10, minus our x1, which is also a negative, so I'm going to write it like this, minus a negative. When we see something like this, we're going to change it to a plus. You could, I would say, don't do that immediately because you might change everything, but once you get the hang of it, you could. Negative 2 minus 4 is what? You can do it in your calculator. You can look up here at the number line. Negative 2 minus 4. Negative 6, thank you. And then this, because we have a negative and a minus, they're going to come together and make a plus. So 10 plus 2 would give us 12. Can that be simplified? Negative 6 over 12. Yes, to what? Close. Negative 1 over not 6, but 2. So that would be the slope of x. Any questions there? We'll do a couple more, and then any you guys want to do, and then we're going to talk about some campus stuff. Oh, and so I'm going to skip 3 and 4 and move on to 5. Before we start 5, what do you, also cross out 7, 8, 9, 10. We're not doing those. You're not doing those. You won't see them. I just forgot to change them. That way you don't get stressed out about those. Okay. What do you notice about number 5? What sticks out? What stands out? The y2 and the y1 and the y2 are the same. Yes, the y values are the same. That's going to be helpful for when we do this. Okay, so let's reset that up. M equals 9 minus 9 over 3 minus 5. What happens there? What's going to happen then when we start to subtract? Which one? We're going to get 0.
Is it undefined?
It's not undefined.
Oh, 0.
It is 0. Because we have that 0 in the numerator. Good. Now, if you're not sure, put it in your calculator. 0 divided by -2, you would get 0. That's a great way to check yourself really quickly if you're not sure which one it is. Okay? So, because we saw that those 9s were the same, that should tell us this is going to give us a 0 slope. I still want you to find this algebraically if you got a question like this, but keep that in mind so you can visualize it in your head. Alright, we're going to do number 6 real quick. How would I set this up? Close. -7 minus a -7. Yes. So in this case, we get -3 in the numerator, and what happens in our denominator? Yes. So this would be -7 plus 7, which cancels out, becomes 0, which is undefined. Yes. Look at 3 and 4 on this page, or towards the back. Other slope formula questions that you want to see do go over before I show you how to check yourself in Desmos and something on campus. I was leaving those for the absent students on your table to put them together. Unless you wanted to put them together.
I was just
No, that's fine. But I would just
smart at this one.
But were there any we wanted to see do go over and have questions? So don't worry about the page that says slope intercept form or standard form. We're doing that next class. Yes. Sure. We will do number 4 on this page, on the page where this one. How would I set this up? Yeah, so 4 minus 0 over -2 minus 10. So 4 over -12, we can simplify that. What would that simplify to be? Very close. It's going to be a negative. 1 over 3. There we go. I tried to tape it, but they won't see it. Okay. Other questions?
I was sure I put 8 minus -8 minus 10 before is my calculator. It's canceled out another 3.
You did -8.
Minus
-8 minus, or negative. Like this.
Yeah. If I can't.
Did you, it may have been the negative minus.
Oh, no.
I think okay, so really quickly, I'm going to show you how you could check these answers in Desmos, like later after you've tried it algebraically if you want to check yourself, and then we're going to do something on campus really quickly. Not really quickly, okay, so I just made up some points. I have some points in Canvas in Desmos. Yep, that's where we are. So if you wanted to check yourself, you could put those points in Desmos and count your slope. Now, sometimes I'm up here at the board or even looking at things, and anytime I go like this, the numbers change and I get confused or miscount lines. So I change my settings. I turn off the minor grid lines, and I add in a step 1 for both the X and Y. That way, anytime I move, unless I like super zoom out, I can still count. I can easily count those numbers. But that helps you do that. If you didn't grab an iPad, go grab an iPad. So, Delta Math changed, and how we get into Delta Math is going to change. So first, I need you to do this. That way, the class populates. In your side link, go into the class, and in the side link, go into Delta Math. Just place that. So go into the class, click the side link. Now mine doesn't pop up, but for our actual assignment, we're gonna go into assignments. So hit done in the top left corner. Hit done in the top left. And then go to assignments. And in your assignments, it will show you a little title that says additional practice. Scroll until you see the formative title, and you're looking for this, Delta Math Slope Part 1. So hit done. So when you click in that, if you're on your computer, it will pop up right there. I'll show you what that looks like. So on your computer, it's going to pop up right there. But on the iPad, you're going to need to launch the external tool. So this is the Delta Math that's due on Friday. So you guys can go ahead and start this. If you have questions, ask each other, ask us, let us know.